talk without pushing the space bar, Kim.
Okay, about another 15 seconds.
Okay.
And then I would give it,
Wait until it's actually streaming.
Yes.
We have to stream
And
first.
even-
You want me to give it maybe a minute? I'll just tell everyone we're back in public. Just let me know, Alan.
yeah, to make sure people have time to check the website, get the link.
Wait a minute or two.
Okay, the second link is active.
Okay. This is Dr. Clark, President of the Louisiana State Board of Medical Examiners. We're now back in public session. We're going to give a couple minutes to allow for folks to sign back in so they can watch the remainder of the meeting. So we'll give it 2 minutes.
Mr. Phillips, are you able to see if persons are logged into or linked up to the YouTube channel?
I'm sorry. It all depends on how they connect.
Okay.
I should know the answer to this, but do we record these?
Yeah, we actually take that recording off of YouTube and create an MP4 basically that we keep.
Okay. All right. And does the public have access to that?
Upon request, but they always have access to go back to that
Okay.
YouTube page.
Okay, time has passed. So we're back in public session. And at this time, I would entertain a motion for the draft proposed LSBME resolution to preserve appropriate scope of practice limitations to ensure patient safety and improve health outcomes. Is there a motion on the floor?
So moved, O'Neill.
Dr. O'Neill has moved. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Dr. Taylor. Discussion. Mr. Allen? Mr. Phillips, is there
No,
any
no
public
comment.
comments? First of
Not
all,
at
is
this
there any
time.
no public comments?
Not at this time.
Any discussion from the board on this issue?
Dr. Taylor has his hand up, and then Ms. Wilton.
Okay, Dr. Taylor.
Yes, I would encourage my fellow board members to strongly consider supporting this resolution. It is, again, not only do we have permission, but we have an obligation to speak on issues of safety, public safety regarding the practice of medicine wherever they occur and in whatever circumstance. I understand that we do have strict prohibitions against certain political activities, which in the wisdom of the legislature have been put as restraints on all boards, although I'm not entirely sure how well those restrictions have been obeyed in the past. That's really not our issue. I think that we're well within our rights and authority. And I think that as long as we specifically state the facts, put the information out there as our counsel has advised, and then let the legislature make the decisions as they may. And again, like I said, they may disagree with us, but it won't be because we didn't have our say. Thank you.
Ms. Wilton.
Yep.
Yes, I was privileged to assist in helping to draft the resolution along with some other folks, Ms. Sport, Dr. Taylor. And after having considered it, and in order to ensure that it is neither the intention nor the actual conduct of the board to violate any of its ethical or anti-competitive prohibitions, I think it would be appropriate to amend the final whereas paragraph to read as follows. Actually, by adding a sentence to the after mandated by law, adding the following sentence. Furthermore, while expressly taking no position on any possible legislation and solely in an effort to provide full and complete information on the issues, we now adopt this resolution. Now, therefore, be it, and then carrying on with resolve. And if any member of the board was so inclined to think that was a good idea, a motion to amend the resolution prior to the vote would be in order.
Kim Sport, so moves.
Yes, Ms. Sport. Yeah, Ms. Sport has her hand up.
Go ahead. A second. I was going to say the chair was going to consider this a friendly amendment, but if we want to, we have a motion on the floor. That's fine. And a second is any second on this issue. Is that Ms. Rita, Dr. Horton?
Yes.
Okay. And any other discussion on this motion for the amendment?
Since I'm the consumer member, I would just like to say that it is our primary obligation to protect the public being the citizens of the state of Louisiana. And I think that this is very informative. And I really personally had no idea, not being in the medical community the way that you are, with my physician colleagues on the board, how much information there was to be learned until I helped to research the scope of practice of other healthcare providers. And I also believe that we do have a duty to inform. I've been in the legislature many times, and they will ask various boards who are prohibited from lobbying what they have to say about this. And I think that this is a very educational and informative document.
Thank you, Ms. Sport. Any other,
Ms.
speak,
Payton,
anyone wants to
yes, ma'am.
speak to the motion?
Ms. Payton?
Ms. Payton?
Wanted to let you guys know, I got a public comment from Jeff Williams. He asks, can we hear a summary of the approved resolution and when will it be available for full review?
Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Sure.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. And any other further discussion on the amendment? Dr. Gulati, call the roll, please. For the approval, yea or nay? Dr. Gulati, are you available?
Yes, I'm ready, sir. Okay, on the amended motion, Dr. Weather,
Yes.
Dr. Johnson,
Yes.
Dr. Horton,
Yes.
Dr. Yu,
Yes.
Dr. Thomas,
No.
Dr. Clark,
Yes.
Ms. Sport,
Yes.
Dr. Valentine, Dr. Valentine, Dr. O'Neill,
Yes.
Dr. Taylor.
Yes.
Mr. Speaker, you have 8 yeas, 1 nay, and 1 not present.
The motion is approved, the amendment. Now we have, I'm gonna go, for the last time, before we vote on the amended resolution, I'm gonna ask if there are any other questions before we vote on the amended resolution. Any other questions or comments from the public?
There is a public comment.
I wanted to mention, I think Mr. Williams was asking us for the summary so that prior to the vote, he could make any comments that he would want to with regard to the resolution, so that you'd have that information prior to the vote.
How can we accommodate that?
It was attached to the materials, so he didn't have access to it through the materials?
No.
What is the barrier for that? It should have been public information.
I mean, it's up to you, Dr. Clark, if you want someone to read the entire resolution into the public record prior to the vote. I mean, apparently
Would that be appropriate?
it's not inappropriate. That's why we provide the materials to people with the notice in the agenda so that they can read, but it's not
Ms.
inappropriate.
Wilton? Well, let's do it. And that way it'll be out there and it'll be on the record.
Would just posting it to our website and telling people that are on this call that it's to the website, would that suffice? Because that,
That would actually be more cumbersome than just having
Okay.
somebody read it. Ms. Sport, do you want to read it into the record?
No, but
I'll do it. I'll do it.
Who wants to volunteer, huh?
I'll do it.
Someone who can read. I can't. Go
I
ahead.
could provide a summary if you would, or if you could provide a summary.
Well,
that-
I mean, it's,
That's what he was asking for. I mean, a summary, that's what he asked for. But
I mean, I don't want to be accused of not properly summarizing it. I mean,
No, I think Ms. Wilton, you're correct. It's all or none.
right. Okay. So
Well,
resolution to preserve appropriate scope of practice limitations to ensure patient safety and improve health outcomes. Whereas the practice of medicine, whether allopathic or osteopathic, means the holding out of oneself to the public as being engaged in the business of, or the actual engagement in the diagnosing, treating, curing, or relieving of any bodily or mental disease, condition, infirmity, deformity, defect, ailment, or injury in any human being other than himself, whether by the use of any drug, instrument, or force, whether physical or psychic, or of what other nature, or any other agency or means, or the examining either gratuitously or for compensation of any person, or material from any person for such purpose, whether such drug, instrument, force, or other agency or means is applied to or used by the patient or by another person, or the attending of a woman in childbirth without the aid of a licensed physician or midwife. LARS 37:1262. Whereas the Louisiana legislature has recognized that the practice of medicine, surgery, and midwifery is a privilege granted by legislative authority and is not an absolute right of individuals, and has deemed it necessary as a matter of policy in the interest of public health, safety, and welfare to provide laws and provisions covering the granting of that privilege and its subsequent use, control, and regulation, to the end that the public shall be properly protected against unprofessional, improper, unauthorized, and unqualified practice of medicine, and from unprofessional conduct of persons licensed to practice medicine, surgery, and midwifery. LARS 37:1261. Whereas the mission of the Louisiana State Board of Medical Examiners is to protect and improve the health, safety, and welfare of the citizens of Louisiana through licensing, regulation, research, and discipline of physicians and allied health professionals in a manner that protects the rights and privileges of the licensees. Whereas physician means a natural person who is the holder of an allopathic MD degree or an osteopathic DO degree from a medical college in good standing with the LSBME, who holds a license, permit, certification, or registration issued by the board to engage in the practice of medicine in the state of Louisiana. LARS 37:1262. Whereas among the duties statutorily entrusted to the LSBME, the legislature has mandated that the LSBME examine all applicants for the practice of medicine, issue licenses or permits to those possessing the necessary qualifications therefor, and to take appropriate administrative actions to regulate the practice of medicine in the state of Louisiana. LARS 37:1270. For the specific purpose of safeguarding the public from the threat to health and safety posed by the unlicensed, unqualified, and/or improper practice of medicine. Whereas the legislature has further mandated that the LSBME enforce the laws relative to the practice of medicine and secure evidence of violations thereof. LARS 37:1270. Whereas advanced practice registered nursing means nursing by a certified registered nurse anesthetist, certified nurse midwife, clinical nurse specialist, or nurse practitioner, which is based on knowledge and skills acquired in a basic nursing education program, licensure as a registered nurse, and a minimum of a master's degree in nursing with a concentration in the respective advanced practice nursing specialty, which includes both didactic and clinical components, advanced knowledge in nursing theory, physical and psychosocial assessment, nursing interventions, and management of healthcare. LARS 37:913. Whereas statutory law and administrative rules require collaborative practice agreements between an APRN and a licensed physician or dentist to govern the scope and parameters of practice by an APRN who engages in medical diagnosis and prescription and medical diagnosis and management. LARS 37:913(8) and 9. Excuse me, Louisiana Administrative Code 46, XLVII 4513. Whereas the safety and welfare of the citizens of Louisiana was the primary consideration for the LSBME and the Louisiana State Board of Nursing to enter into a joint statement of position for collaboration and collaborative practice, recognizing statutory authority for APRNs to diagnose and manage patients, including prescriptive authority, within the parameters of a CPA mutually agreed upon by an APRN and one or more licensed physicians or dentists. Whereas the LSBN created a CPA which acknowledges that advanced practice nursing includes certain acts of medical diagnosis, and per LAC 46 XLVII 4513B, these acts must be undertaken in accordance with a CPA with a collaborating physician or dentist. Whereas on March 11, 2020, Governor John Bel Edwards declared a statewide public health emergency as a result of the imminent threat posed to Louisiana citizens by COVID-19, creating emergency conditions threatening the lives and health of Louisiana citizens. Proclamation number 25 JBE 2020. Whereas state agencies were given the authority through LARS 49:953B to adopt temporary rules to create emergency provisions to prevent an imminent peril to the public health, safety, or welfare. Whereas on March 19, 2020, the Louisiana State Board of Nursing passed 2 emergency rules in response to the COVID-19 pandemic, one of which allows APRNs practicing with a previously approved collaborating physician to extend their practice to new sites without reporting to the LSBN. Whereas on March 31st, Governor Edwards issued an executive order containing additional measures for COVID-19, including the temporary suspension of LSBME and LSBN collaborative practice agreement requirements for APRNs, proclamation number 38 JBE 2020. Whereas allied healthcare practitioner means an individual who holds any form of healthcare practitioner license that the board is authorized to issue other than as a physician, including a physician assistant pursuant to LARS 37:1360.21 et seq, and a midwife pursuant to LARS 37:3240 et seq. And the citation to that is LARS 37:1281. Whereas physician's assistants are healthcare professionals qualified by academic and clinical education in a physician assistant curriculum and licensed by the LSBME to provide healthcare services at the direction and under the supervision of a physician or a group of physicians, or approved by the board as supervising physician, or plural, LARS 1360:21. Whereas a supervising physician of a physician assistant shall have been in the active practice of medicine for not less than 3 years following the date on which the physician was awarded a Doctor of Medicine or Doctor of Osteopathy degree, and not currently be engaged in a medical residency or other postgraduate training program. Louisiana Administrative Code 46 XLV 1508. Whereas the legislature modernized the laws governing physician assistant practice to encourage and permit the utilization of physicians' assistants by physicians and to permit the more effective utilization of the skills of physicians, particularly in the primary care setting, by enabling them to delegate medical services to qualified physician assistants when such delegation is consistent with the patient's health and welfare, LARS 1360.21, that we're missing a title number 371360. Whereas a physician assistant is considered to be and is deemed the agent of a supervising physician in the performance of all practice-related activities, including but not limited to assisting in surgery and the ordering and interpretation of diagnostic and other medical services, and shall not practice without supervision except in life-threatening and in emergency situations like man-made and natural disaster relief efforts, LARS 37:1360.31. Whereas the legal responsibility for the physician assistant's patient care activities, including care and treatment that is provided in healthcare facilities, shall remain that of the supervising physician's group practice of physicians or a professional medical corporation or hospital or other healthcare organization or entity, LARS 37:1360.32. Whereas on April 30th, 2020, Governor Edwards issued an executive order renewing the March 11th, 2020 Declaration of Public Health Emergency and included inter alia a provision temporarily suspending the requirement for supervision of physician assistants mandated in LARS 37:1360.28, requiring, however, that a PA must practice only within a specified scope of practice subject to education, knowledge, skills, and ability. Proclamation number 52, JBE 2020. Whereas the legislature has mandated that the LSBME establish and publish minimum curriculum and experience requirements for persons seeking midwife licensure, establish and publish minimum standards of midwifery practice in accordance with those developed and accepted by the profession, and investigate consumer complaints or complaints from healthcare providers, LARS 37:3243. Whereas the scope of practice of a licensed midwife established by the legislature is the provision of care to low-risk patients determined by physician evaluation and examination to be essentially normal for pregnancy and childbirth, and includes prenatal supervision and counseling, preparation for childbirth, and supervision and care during labor and delivery, and care of the mother and the newborn in the immediate postpartum period, if progress meets criteria generally accepted as normal as defined by the LSBME. LARS 37:3244, Louisiana Administrative Code 46 XLV 5313. Whereas low-risk patient means an individual who is at a normal risk of developing complications during pregnancy and childbirth, as evidenced by the absence of any pre-existing maternal disease or disease arising from during pregnancy, or such other considerations as the LSBME may identify in LARS 37:324112. Whereas a licensed midwife practitioner must require that the client have a physical evaluation and examination and be found to be essentially normal or at low risk of developing complications during pregnancy and childbirth before her care can be assumed. The initial physician evaluation and examination shall include the physical assessment procedure to meet current standards of care set forth by the American Congress of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, Louisiana Administrative Code 46 XLV 53-157. That's another typo. Whereas the determination of a low-risk pregnant person must be performed by a physician currently practicing obstetrics and is licensed to practice medicine or osteopathy in Louisiana, LARS 37:324114. Whereas certified nurse midwife is an advanced practice registered nurse educated in the disciplines of nursing and midwifery and certified according to a nationally recognized certifying body, such as the American College of Nurse Midwives Certification Council, as approved by the LSBN, and who is authorized to manage nurse midwifery care of newborns and women in the antepartum, intrapartum, postpartum, and or gynecological periods pursuant to LAC 46 XLV II 4503B1 et seq. Whereas APRN midwives are not licensed by the LSBME, but rather by the LSBN, and are required to have CPAs with a physician to practice midwifery. Whereas home births are associated with a more than twofold increased risk of perinatal death, 1 to 2 in 1,000, a threefold increased risk of neonatal seizures or serious neurologic dysfunction, 0.4 to 0.6 in 1,000, and a 23 to 27% risk of requiring transfer of a laboring first birth patient for lack of progress in labor, non-reassuring fetal status, need for pain relief, hypertension, bleeding, and fetal malposition. Whereas pharmacist means an individual currently licensed as a pharmacist by the Louisiana Board of Pharmacy to engage in the practice of pharmacy in this state, LARS 22:1852. Whereas pharmacist services, filling and dispensing of prescription drugs or providing products and supplies, drug therapy, and other patient care services provided by a licensed pharmacist with the intent of achieving outcomes related to cure, prevention, or management of disease, elimination or reduction of a patient's symptoms, or arresting or slowing of a disease process, LARS 22:1852. Whereas pharmacy or pharmacies means any appropriately licensed place within this state where prescription drugs are dispensed and pharmacist services are provided, and any place outside of this state where prescription drugs are dispensed and pharmacist services are provided to residents of this state, LARS 22:1852. Whereas pharmacy collaborative drug therapy management means that practice whereby a pharmacist or pharmacists have on a voluntary basis agreed to manage the disease-specific drug therapy of a patient under written protocol, working in conjunction with a physician licensed to practice medicine by the LSBME, but does not include the substitution by the pharmacist of a product that is not an equivalent drug product of the product originally prescribed by the physician or practitioner without explicit consent of the physician or practitioner, LARS 37:11. Whereas LSBME administrative rules define CBTM or drug therapy management as that practice in which a pharmacist voluntarily agrees with the physician to manage the disease-specific drug therapy of one or more patients of such physician within a predetermined range of medications selected by the physician and set forth in a patient-specific written order set and specifies that DTM shall be limited to A, monitoring and modifying a disease-specific drug therapy, B, collecting and reviewing patient history, C, obtaining and reviewing vital signs including pulse, temperature, blood pressure, and respiration, D, ordering, evaluating, and applying the results of laboratory tests directly related to the disease-specific drug therapy being managed under an order set, provided such tests do not require the pharmacist to interpret such testing or formulate a diagnosis, and E, providing disease or condition-specific patient education and counseling, LAC 46 XLV 7403. Whereas the LSBME and the Louisiana Board of Pharmacy have each created a 2-page application for physicians and pharmacists requiring to register for requesting to register for CDTM. Whereas physicians complete more than 10,000 hours of clinical education during their 4 years of medical school and 3 to 7 years of residency training to provide complex differential diagnoses, develop treatment plans to address multiple organ systems, and to order and interpret tests within the context of a patient's overall health condition. Whereas the LSBME promulgated rules effective January 1st, 2019 to improve the practice of medicine by strengthening the requirements and qualifications for the licensing of physicians to ensure the highest level of patient safety and quality of care by requiring a graduate of an American or Canadian medical school to have completed at least 2 years, or alternatively have completed 1 year and have a current commitment in a form and manner specified by the board for a second year of postgraduate clinical training in the United States or in Canada in a medical residency or equivalent accredited program. Whereas APRNs must complete only 2 to 3 years of graduate level nursing education and 500 to 720 hours of clinical training. Whereas a physician assistant can become licensed to practice only under the supervision of a physician in Louisiana following completion of a 29-month physician assistant program, which includes 2,000 hours of clinical care. Whereas pharmacists attend 4 years of pharmacy school, which includes 1,700 hours of practice experience, which does not prepare pharmacists to clinically assess patients or perform differential diagnoses to discern the root cause of a symptom. Whereas APRNs, physician assistants, and pharmacists are integral members of the care team, but the skills and acumen obtained by physicians throughout their extensive education and training make them more uniquely qualified to oversee and supervise patients' care. Whereas the LSBME has received no complaints from APRNs, physician assistants, and or pharmacists or any licensees or any member of the public regarding present law or rulemaking. Whereas the LSBME has received no suggestion from the public reflecting a necessity or desire for the provision of unsupervised medical care. Whereas the LSBME has not been approached by any APRNs, physician assistants, and or pharmacists or their representatives to discuss possible changes to present law or rulemaking. Whereas the LSBME has not been informed by any APRNs, physician assistants, and or pharmacists or their boards that existing collaborative and or supervisory agreements requiring physician oversight have imposed a regulatory or economic burden to their respective practices. Whereas the LSBME has become aware of efforts to eliminate or to limit or eliminate the need for APRNs, physician assistants, and or pharmacists to have collaborative and supervisory agreements with physicians as is currently mandated by law. Furthermore, while expressly taking no position on any possible legislation and solely in an effort to provide full and complete information on the issue, we adopt this resolution. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the legislature has delegated and entrusted to the LSBME the duty to protect and improve the health, safety, and welfare of the citizens of Louisiana through licensing, regulation, research, and discipline of physicians and allied health professionals. And in furtherance of that duty, the board declares as follows. Number 1, physician expertise is widely recognized as integral to quality medical care in the United States. In recognition thereof, the legislature has statutorily mandated physician supervision and collaborations for APRNs, physician assistants, and pharmacists to ensure patient safety and quality of care, since the ultimate responsibility for each individual patient's care rests with the physician. 2, limitation or elimination of the requirement for APRNs, physician assistants, and or pharmacists to have collaborative and or supervisory agreements with licensed physicians will remove a critical component of patient care provided by primary care physicians, threatening the standard of care and ultimately the health and safety of the patient. 3, APRNs, physician assistants, and pharmacists are not trained to treat patients with complicated medical conditions, which often require equally complex treatments without any physician input. 4, some of the potential threats to the standard of medical care and consequently the health and safety of patients of permitting APRNs, physician assistants, and pharmacists without physician input to include the provision of treatment without review of a patient's full medical records and provision of treatment in settings that are not equipped for or conducive to performing full medical examinations on patients or protecting patients' privacy or sexual boundaries. And 5, the extraordinary measures implemented temporarily by gubernatorial executive order to respond to the COVID-19 pandemic do not justify permanent elimination or revision of the laws governing supervisory and collaborative agreements, as these laws play a vital role in the protection of public health and safety. The end.
I would move for adoption of the resolution. Kim Sport.
Second, O'Neill.
Bye. Hope you sleep good
Oh,
tonight.
I think I had my mic muted. I'm sorry. So I have a motion and a second. Any other questions? Dr. Taylor?
Dr. Taylor has his hand up. Yep.
Yes.
Dr. Taylor?
Are we going to have an opportunity for whoever's on?
You muted. No.
I'm sorry, the phone was ringing. Are we going to have any opportunity for those who are watching to make a comment on what they've just heard?
Okay, why don't we see if there are any public comments? I'm sorry.
None at this time. We could wait another minute if you want to.
I have none at this time.
Okay. Wait a few minutes. We'll give a minute. So I have a motion and a second to approve as amended. Dr. Galata, please call the roll for a yea or nay vote on approval of the amended resolution.
On final passage, Dr. Weather,
Yes.
Dr. Johnson,
Yes.
Dr. Horton,
Yes.
Dr. Yu,
Yes.
Dr. Thomas,
Dr. Thomas has texted me and is registering a no vote. Does that count? Or does she or can we count it as no and have it for the minutes at the next meeting? Can she amend her vote?
No, it has to be voice vote.
So she cannot vote.
we will mark her as abstaining.
Okay, all righty.
Dr.
Yes.
Clark,
Yes.
Ms. Sport,
Yes.
Dr. Valentine, Dr. Valentine, Dr. O'Neill,
Yes.
Dr. Taylor.
Yes.
Mr. President, you have 8 yeas and 2 abstentions.
The motion carries. Thank you very much. Are there any public comments?
Hang on, as related to the sole purpose of protecting the public, excellent resolution. Thank you, and a special thank you to Ms. Wilton. That's from Jeff Williams at the LSMS.
How do we make this document public? What would be the next step, Dr. Kalata?
Let us make some editorial changes as was suggested with the amendment, and a few typos and a proper site on the legislative statute, and we'll probably put it on the website tomorrow morning.
Do we need to put it on the website or just have this information available if it's requested? What would be the most appropriate? I'm asking this of the attorneys because we want to make sure that we have now voted as we're the board on a resolution. What's the best way to handle this, our council?
I think in for a penny, in for a pound. You adopted it as a resolution. It's going to be in the public minutes of the meeting that would also be available down the line. So I don't see any reason not to go ahead and put it on the website as soon as we clean it up.
I agree.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, everyone, for entertaining this meeting today, and go out and have a great evening.
Thank
Bye-bye.
y'all very
Motion-
much.
Meeting is adjourned.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody. Thank you, Ms.
Bye-bye.
Winton.
Thanks, everybody.
I was tired watching you do that.
Same here. Fell asleep almost. Take care.